Tired of restless nights? At Leesa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Leesa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to leesa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See leesa.com for more details.
This is where projects come to life. Our showrooms are designed to inspire with the latest products from top brands, curated in an inviting, hands-on environment, and a team of industry experts to support your project. We'll be there to make sure everything goes as planned, from product selection to delivery coordination. At Ferguson Bath, Kitchen, and Lighting Gallery, your project is our priority.
Find great brands like Bosch at your local showroom or visit us online at ferguson.com/build.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Here is Paul Dottino. I am Lance Medow as we take you up to the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways you'd interact with us here on the program. You have to excuse my voice. I've been calling a lot of basketball over the last few days, so still trying to pile through it, but we are making some headway here. 201-939-4513. That is the telephone number. Hashtag Giants Chat on Twitter. As a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So free agency, Paul, starting to slow down a little as the first wave has gotten to the point where free agency is going to continue, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as aggressive for all the teams. I mean, we've had some trades on the quarterback front. Giants clearly have had a focus on, if we just look at the first wave overall, the trenches. The defensive line, offensive line, a lot of competition across the board, specifically on the interior at the guard spot. And then, of course, Jermaine Illuminor provides flexibility at both tackle as well as guard.
Lance, I think the other characteristics that we can say about this Giants free agent class, they're younger veterans. Okay, they didn't go to the senior citizens home to look at their free agent list. They kept it on the younger side. And for the most part, look at the durability of all the guys that they signed. You know, in the past, some of the free agents they had signed over the years had some injury issues. And, you know, they were a little bit more hopeful that those guys would work out. This year's free agent class has much fewer manpower games missed, I believe, than some of the others in recent memory. And I don't think that's an accident. I haven't talked to Joe Shane specifically about that, but I have a hunch that was also one of the things they were really targeting this time.
Well, you look at Schlotman and Stinney, also have not been starters their entire careers. So
that's true,
perhaps
too.
That's a contributing factor why they have held up. But Brian Burns, he's been in the lineup every single year since he was drafted in 2019. He's played at least 15 games. So that, I think, is a positive development. Illuminor, same thing. He's been a starter. He's come off the bench. But I do agree with you. I think there is a theme of guys that have proven year in and year out, no matter what their role is, they can hold up. And that's important, especially when you don't at this point know who your starting five is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I also believe, too, that they're now very heavy at the guard spot.
Yeah.
So for those of you who still want to move Evan Neal inside, not happening. Okay? The Giants have really, in addition to McKeithen and Ezeudu coming back off injuries, they've loaded up with a bunch of veterans who also are guards. Illuminor is the only veteran tackle they've actually signed.
Sure.
So just by the very numbers game, that tells you that Evan Neal is being given every opportunity to win his job at right tackle. Illuminor will be his competitor, and that's the way it's going to be. It would make absolutely no sense, given the numbers right now on this roster, if they tried to bump Neal inside. There's too much traffic in there with the guys that they've signed.
Well, and also those guys have experience at guard, too.
That's my point.
Evan Neal.
That's my
point.
point.
To me is the first thing that you could bring up. Plus, Illuminor has multitude of experience at different positions. So, if anything, if you think Evan Neal's part of your best five, then you put Illuminor in at guard, John Runyon's your other guard, and then Andrew Thomas and obviously John Michael Schmitz round out the five. Could play out that way, or Illuminor maybe wins the tackle job, and then Schlotman or Stinney get the other guard spot, or who knows, maybe they draft a guard too. I mean, remember, it was still early in that offseason process, but I think the emphasis was, let's bring in veterans. Let's bring in guys that have been in the league and let them compete and let the best man win. And let's also get some guys that are coming off of the prime of the end of their rookie deals. For example, Runyon and Burns, both expiring rookie contracts, whereas the other guys have been a little bit more journeymen. So the point is, Paul, you have a bit of a mix across what they addressed in the free agency process.
We don't know how Tyree Phillips is coming back from his injury, but it would seem to me that as you look at things today, you've got Illuminor. If he wins a spot at guard, fine. Or if he wins the tackle spot, fine. You've got three tackles, is my point. You've got Thomas, you've got Neal, you've got Illuminor.
And you need three, too.
I think you need four.
Well, doesn't hurt to have more, but you definitely need three.
Yeah, I think you have to have a fourth capable guy who can play tackle. Now, that may be, I don't know exactly where Tyree Phillips is in his rehab. He was on a one-year contract last year.
Yep.
Coming off the injury, I don't know how many phone calls he's going to get. So you may just be able to rehab him, and he might just slot in there maybe as the fourth tackle. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if Matthew Pert winds up, winning a job as the fourth tackle. I mean, we have to see if they're even interested in bringing him back. We don't know the answer to that. Or maybe they wind up drafting at some point during the 3-day process another tackle to be the fourth tackle. But to me, the numbers game, the way this roster looks today, that's where it's shaken out. They've got guards. I think if they're going to add somebody else to this offensive line room, it's probably going to be a guy who they're looking at as a fourth tackle, which means either a young rookie project, okay, not a prospect, but a project, or another veteran minimum guy who they may, could be Phillips.
Sure.
Who winds up being that guy.
And you could find a guy. I mean, you could even find a guy late in free agency who maybe is waiting and doesn't want to be in camp too, right? How many times have some of those guys appeared? This is Big Blue Kickoff Live, Monday's edition, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcast. Now, what also has played in to the trenches is them bringing in several tight ends, Paul. And tight ends that can contribute in the blocking aspect, I would argue more so than being true threats at receiver. Now, as it stands right now, you have Darren Waller and you have Daniel Bellinger. So we're talking about a battle for the third tight end spot. And realistically, that third tight end is not going to be a prolific contributor as a receiver. If anything, they're going to be on the field as a blocker, but mainly they're going to be a special teamer. For example, Jack Stahl, he was a backup Eagles tight end.
Played a lot, though, in a two tight end set.
He did, but he only has 20 receptions over the course of his career. He's a blocker, and he's a special teamer because he played a lot of the snaps on special teams. Now, Chris Manhertz for the Denver Broncos, been in the league a little bit longer, but also you look at what he did with Denver, he played about 30% of the offensive snaps. Yeah. So that's what you're looking at in terms of who they've brought in for competition on the back end of the depth chart.
I think the Waller thing is dragging on a little bit longer than I'd like it to. Let's not kid ourselves. Here we are now, third week of March, and we still don't know where he's at.
Sure.
I don't know if the Giants have a better indication from him or if it just hasn't become public. I don't know what that deal is. I certainly know that they want him back. They've made that clear. They want him back. If he's going to play, he's playing here. And that's fine. because now, as you mentioned, you're talking about one of these guys being the Giants' third tight end. They've also retained Lawrence Cager.
Sure, that's another one. Yep.
Now, if Waller is not coming back, the Giants have a decision to make. Yep. Do they potentially draft a tight end, which it's not a great tight end class, who can compete with Daniel Bellinger to be the lead guy? Because right now, Bellinger, if Waller leaves, Bellinger's the number one tight end. If Waller leaves and they draft somebody, let's say, I don't know, I mean, look, could Brock Bowers suddenly become part of that equation now at 6? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. So do you take one like in the 3rd round or 4th round? Remember, Bellinger was not a 1st or 2nd round pick either. Do you take somebody later on and say, okay, you're coming in as a rookie and you're going to get the opportunity to compete with Daniel Bellinger to be the starting tight end, and it's going to be 2 of you plus one of these other fellows who we have in the cupboard. And Cager could be that guy, or maybe it's one of these other fellas, and they'll still wind up being the 3rd tight end. This has a couple of different ways it could go.
I'd be surprised if they go after a tight end with the 6th overall spot.
So would I.
I mean, once again, I think you got to go back to Joe Shane, Buffalo's track record. I know last year the Bills took Dalton Kincaid, but that was also a late 1st-round pick. That was not an early 1st-round pick. I would think they would look to address a position of either greater need or greater impact. And I'm not saying that Bowers wouldn't be a positive impact, but I don't know if the Giants are saying to themselves, we're a dynamic tight end away from getting rid of and dismissing all of our issues. Especially a guy who is not necessarily known for his blocking as well. You know, with all these receiving tight ends, there's always limitations. Not to say that they can't improve from a blocking standpoint, but if you're going to draft a tight end at 6th overall, I think he's got to have very few question marks with respect to all facets of his game. So I think Bellinger is proven. He could be the main receiving tight end, and then you could have these other complementary pieces as blockers. And once again, just to put things in perspective, Manhurts has 26 receptions over the course of his career. He's been in the NFL since 2016. Stoll, 20 receptions. You have 46 receptions between those other 2 tight ends. They're not going to all of a sudden pull a 180 at this stage in their careers. If Waller does retire, it's Bellinger's show, barring the addition of some other proven commodity. And here's the other thing, Paul. When you get to the 90-man roster, they're going to cut down guys. There could be a more established tight end that hits the market later on in the summer, and maybe the Giants go in that route. If they feel, you know what, we went through camp, we need another option who can help us in the receiving game, we don't think we have it on the roster. They could easily go out and get an established free agent. I could absolutely see that coming to fruition.
I think if the Giants were to go for a tight end, and I would say probably 3rd round for me is the sweet spot if Waller decides to retire. The guy that I've been kind of keeping my eye on is Cade Stover out of Ohio State. 5th-year junior. They're listed him now. I'm just looking for his vitals at 6'4", 247. He is more of a receiving tight end. He has work to do as a blocker. But I'm thinking, even though, to be frank, I thought that Bellinger did not have his best year blocking last season. He was better earlier in his career, and I thought he was very inconsistent last year. But we know that is really supposed to be his forte. So I'll assume Bellinger cleans up his blocking from last season, and think that if they do draft a tight end, somebody like Stover, who is more of a pass-catching threat, would probably be the guy that they would want to take if Waller was eliminated from the equation, because they've already signed blockers.
Yeah, so you don't even have to have Bellinger block as much, perhaps.
Right.
Depending on the alignment of the tight ends.
Right.
Obviously.
That's how I see it. Maybe a guy like Stover then makes the team with Bellinger, and then maybe Stoll is the 3rd tight end because somebody like Cager would be in a battle with the rookie. And I suspect that Stover probably has more upside. I mean, if you're going to take him in the 3rd round, you would think so, right?
Sure. Makes sense.
That's kind of where I'm thinking. I don't believe I would go more higher than third round if I were to take a tight end after Waller quits, if he does.
Well, because once again, I think that there is an opportunity to get more well-rounded players in those earlier picks, and you can wait on a tight end. Because if you're taking a tight end in the middle rounds, once again, you're probably taking somebody that's stronger or much stronger in one facet versus the other. To me, you're going to take a tight end that high in the draft, they've got to be as finished of a product, Paul, as possible. Or you just say to yourself, he's a pseudo wide receiver, and we come in with him as a rookie, he's going to be one of the top targeted guys. Okay, I get it. It's justified. But I think if you want to expose the player to blocking, he has to have shown a prowess to that in college.
No doubt.
Can't take a flyer on those situations. But, once again, there's room and flexibility at the tight end position, even moving forward. You can find somebody late in camp when they get rid of a lot of players through the waiver wire. That, to me, I wouldn't be, if I'm the front office, I wouldn't say, man, we've still have some question marks at tight end. I'm worried about whether or not we can shore up that position. I think they'll be in okay shape if Darren Waller decides that he wants to hang up the cleats.
I think ultimately the Giants do want to become, it just looks like to me, a little bit more of a pass-oriented team. Barkley's gone. He's with Philadelphia. They're going to go running back by committee. Singletary will be the lead back of that committee. But that says to me that, the running game is going to be a little bit more underemphasized, perhaps, than it would have been had Barkley been the bell cow. And that's just not the case anymore. So between the fact that the offensive linemen that the Giants signed are better in pass protection, okay, they're more technique guys. They're not necessarily, like Runyon is not a boxcar. He's not what you would call, a big bulldozer of a pro guard. That's not what he does. He's not a road grader. Runyon is more of a pass protecting guard. Remember, he was a tackle at Michigan when he came out of college. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, John Michael Schmitz is a little bit of an undersized center. This is a team that to me looks like they're preparing to become more of a finesse offense. Even though they're trying to enhance their offensive line, I think they're doing it more towards gearing to a pass-oriented style than they are to bludgeon you. It's weird for me to say that because I've always known in my mind the Giants' most successful offenses to be ones that were nasty and strong and thick up front. They've had some undersized guys over the years, but look at the power that they played with when Chris Snee was here. Booth was a massive human being when he came in and replaced Boss during the Super Bowl season. David Deal was a very big box cart kind of guy.
Sure.
Go back to Kareem McKenzie. He was a caboose. These guys were parts of a train now. They weren't just like regular standard linemen. These guys were train cars. They were big. So boxcars, as Parcells and George Young used to say, the dancing elephants or the boxcars. And I just don't see the Giants going that way. Even Evan Neal is more svelte for his size. Thomas is a boxcar. He's the only one. Well, Illuminor is kind of thick, but I just think that it looks to me like they're going to be a little more pass-oriented. And I think they're going to enhance the wide receiver room because I think they're taking one at 6. And that's going to be an explosive impact player who's going to, again, make you want to lean toward the pass. I think that's one of the reasons why Waller's here, and they want Waller to stay, is because they want another dynamic pass-catching threat, right? So I'm just getting that sense that this team is going to be a little bit more leaning on the pass maybe than what we have seen in the past, or at least what has succeeded for them in the past.
Though, you still need to be able to establish the run.
You don't have to tell me.
No, I know that, and I'm not saying that, but I find it hard to believe that they're going to be a team that gets that pass happy, given the fact that I don't think you want any of the quarterbacks on the roster to be in situations where they're having that high volume of pass attempts.
Well, the 2011 team, which was last in the NFL in rushing, right, and won the Super Bowl because Eli was absolutely sensational all season long, especially when it counted. They were able to run the ball down the stretch when they had to run the ball. So they found a functional running game when called upon. They did not exclusively rely on the pass, although for most of the season, they were a pass-oriented team. Manningham, Cruz, Nix.
Sure.
I mean,
they also had to play from behind in several games, too.
No doubt.
Which contributes.
No doubt. So, in any event, that's probably the only pass-oriented Giants team, because I think it's fair to say they were more pass-oriented, that succeeded and was able to, reach the promised land, because that's not usually the Giants' MO.
I just brought up the numbers from 2011 just to use that to further expand your example. Eli had 589 pass attempts that season.
That's a lot.
They ran the ball 411 times.
There you go.
So, that ratio is, once again, I don't think very favorable on a consistent basis.
Now, when you have skills like Nix, Manningham, and Cruz,
of course, yeah,
in the passing game, and also they could throw it to Bradshaw as well on dump downs.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of understand that a little bit, but I certainly was very happy when they started to run the ball a little more effectively down the stretch. Trust me.
Well, it was needed. I remember Jake Ballard was on that team too, and he made some key catches as well. But you also had a veteran, polished quarterback. That to me, Paul, matters, does it not? When you look at
who's
does. At the controls, right? I mean, just to give you an idea of comparison, in 2023, let's go to last season, okay? Because you were mentioning run heavy. All the quarterbacks threw the ball a combined 518 times last season.
Mm-hmm.
They ran the ball 454 times. So they did throw the ball over 500 times, but you had about an additional 40 carries over the course of the season.
Right.
Now, in 2022...
Now, remember, last year, they were behind on the game clock virtually the whole season.
Yeah. Well, that's why, let me go to 2022. Because that was a lot of close games, but you were able to lean on the run. 520 pass attempts between the quarterbacks, and obviously Daniel Jones was the main guy. 520 runs. How about that? They ran the ball and threw the ball identical in 2022.
Oh, and gee, they made the playoffs that year, right? Wow, I wonder why that worked out so well. Because they had balance.
Well, and they also won a lot of close games. I mean, they were the Vikings, just with a less record in terms of the one-score games.
It just boggles my mind how people just refuse to admit to the facts. The facts are the facts. You have to have a functional running game when you need to run the ball, or you will not win. It's that simple.
Well, and that's why I could see, Paul, could the pass attempts go up from 2023? I mean, how high could they truly go up, considering you did throw the ball over 500 times? Perhaps. Maybe they go up. I mean, to me, if you're going to... Here's the middle ground, where maybe there's more of a compromise. If you're increasing the targets to Wan'Dale Robinson, Devin Singletary, Eric Gray, Gary Brightwell, I can live with that, because that is an extension of the run game. But if you're then taking additional passes and you're going for the home run, regardless of whether or not you have the personnel to do that, that's where I think you enter more dangerous territory. So if you're taking some runs, you're turning them into shorter passes with the slot guys and the running backs.
Right.
That to me is, once again, a compromise area, which I don't think is a negative on any offense.
And it would not surprise me based on what the Giants have done. Remember, they also signed Isaiah McKenzie, who was that kind of player.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that is part of an expanded role in the playbook. Look, I don't think the Giants are going to abandon the run. I just think that they're going to do things a little bit differently now this year. And it may lean more on throwing the ball, even if it's the style you're talking about. I know that they're smart enough to understand that you still need a functional running game, and you have to be able to run it when you need to run it. I know they're smart enough to do that. Brian Dable's been around a long time, okay? He understands that part of the game. That's quite clear. And they used that running game to make the playoffs in 2022. So you're not going to tell me for 1 second that Brian's going to ignore the run. I don't think they're going to do that.
Here's one other factor I want to throw out before we open up the phone lines. Daniel Jones's torn ACL. And the fact that in 2022, Paul, Jones played a prominent role on the ground.
Sure did.
This is why I'm a little skeptical. I'm not denying your philosophy. I'm just a little skeptical of emphasizing the passing game that much more, because if DJ is not what he was as a runner, you don't have that staple on the ground. You have to use your conventional backs, and you're taking the quarterback maybe a little bit more out of the equation. That, to me, can lead to really bad imbalance. You know, if he's leaning more on his arm because he can't run as much, or you don't want to expose him, you got to be cautious, Paul, about those dynamics and how those numbers break down. So that's also one of those X factors, right? How does Jones's health influence the state of your run game? And if he can't go with as many runs per game, you lose that. If you just make up for that with passes, you know, you don't want to be approaching 600 pass attempts on a season, I'll tell you that.
I suspect what we're going to see out of the Giants with this little bit of a lean is quick game.
Well, that's what I was alluding to.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately the result of what you just said. You will see more quick game in the passing attack, because I think they want to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands faster to help the protection, but also because I think they're going to want to have some more dynamic skill position guys who can do something with that ball. You know, big time yak.
And McKenzie
big time yak.
Yeah.
You know, and Hyatt's part of that equation. Singletary is part of that equation. Hopefully Odunze is too. Or, for that matter, Neighbors.
Well, both of them apply.
Either one.
Something tells me you get those guys in open space, you're going to be okay.
Either one.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, few reminders before we head back to the phone lines. Giants Huddle Podcast, you can check that out. Your favorite podcast platform, you go to giants.com/podcasts. As we look ahead to the 2024 campaign, you can take your fandom to the next level. Season ticket membership, they're now available. To learn more and all about the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the Giants official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV. It brings you original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. All right, let's head to the phone lines here on BBKL. Let's check in with CJ in the Bronx. CJ, welcome aboard. What do you got for us?
Good afternoon, guys. I'm calling because I want to thank Joe Shane, because during the time when we had that whole Wink and Dable problem, we all sat here saying that we've seen Wink develop players. We haven't received Dable develop any players on offense. So I think him going for vets on the offensive line. Let's change it up. Let's do something new. Hopefully things will change. Second, I want to get into Coach Cam. If you float us around 2 sacks per game after 2017, we have averaged 49.43 sacks per game. 49.43 sacks. That's a lot. If you float us around 32, 38, we'll be the happiest team in the world. We'll love you forever. We'll love you forever. Of course, you guys are going to go pass. And that's why it's more important for us, if we're going in the draft, to get the player that's great at something. That's why Neighbors is above everyone else to me. Don't trade a pick. Take Neighbors. He's good at what he does, his route running. Make it happen. But the problem I have going into the season, my man DJ. I didn't like him at first. I loved him in 2020. But he's been going through a lot. I looked at the average points per game with him. 2019, 21.58 with him, 21 without him. But we had Eli Manning as a backup. 2020, 18.36 with him, 6.5 without him. That's Joe Judge and Gary. 2021, a mess. 18.36 with him, 9.33 without him. that proves he's a good quarterback. His floor is really good. I believe his floor will be 18 as him as a quarterback. We were lucky 2022 healthy, 22.5 all year. 2023, it was just battle round. I swear that man went into one of the front houses and broke all the mirrors. Those that front houses with mirrors that show you different sides of yourself, he broke them all. Because last year was just bad. 11.39 per game. Without him, 18. But I believe that Andrew Thomas factor is real. It's very real with those two. These two need to be together. I wish I had more time. I got to go. I'll listen off air or
all right, CJ.
download.
Yep, appreciate the phone call. Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when you lose your starting quarterback, you're going to dip in terms of production. But in fairness, last season, I would argue no matter who was under center, they had offensive issues. I really don't think there was a major difference between all three of the guys. And I think if you just look at it from an optic standpoint, regardless of what the numbers show, I think everyone across the board would come to grips with that conclusion. But listen, 22 points just in general over the last few seasons is not going to get you to where you need to be. You look at the top offenses in the NFL and the teams that were making the playoffs last year, Paul, minimum, I mean, you want to be 26, 27 if you really want to make some inroads there.
Yeah, but you're not getting that high in 1 year.
No, well, I'm the first one to campaign for that.
I think that, he's trying to be a little more realistic with how much improvement can you get in one season. And I understand that. So, I'm not going to diss him for picking that number. I will say this. If the Giants' defense is as good as we think it can be, because they've now formed a triangle. Thibodeau, Burns, Lawrence. Triangle funnels to Bobby Okereke in the middle. Man, oh man, oh man. That triangle is top shelf in the National Football League right now. Those three guys up front and Okereke in the middle, that triangle, go and look at every NFL team right now and look at their triangle. They talk about up the middle in baseball, right? Your catcher, your shortstop, your second baseman, and your center fielder. Well, look at your two edge guys, basically your nose tackle, because that's really what he plays. Dexter plays nose tackle, basically. And your middle linebacker. That triangle for the Giants is top shelf. Now, what we don't know for sure is exactly what the secondary is going to look like, because there's some relative inexperience back there on the current roster. But the triangle is really, really good. I think the Giants' defense will be improved this year. Tay Banks, of course, entering his second season, I think is going to get better too. So if the defense is better, well, maybe you don't need to reach as high as you might want to reach for the offense. Just having a better defense may allow you to score 22 a game and still come up with a winning record and compete for a playoff spot. Maybe it will. You may not have to go 24, 25, 26 a game because this defense should be improved. Now, in terms of the core of the defense, we still don't know how the new coordinator, Shane Bowen's, going to call things. We have an idea of what he likes to do. It's more Patrick Graham style than it is Wink Martindale style. That we know. How well are these guys going to do it? We'll see.
Well, and that's the other thing in terms of the defense overall, Paul. What you're hitting on is, you're judging last season based on what they did with Wink. And now you got a completely different voice, a guy that may not be as aggressive as Wink was.
Well, it's less risk, right?
Sure. But the risk also led to quarterbacks being jittery a little.
It did.
And making decisions that didn't necessarily benefit them too. So I think it's a little give and take, I guess is my point. It's not to say that losing the blitz percentage puts the defense in a precarious spot. No, I mean, maybe you're going to be a more disciplined, conservative group. Everybody's in position, they make plays. But I think a lot of what the Giants did, especially in the turnover department, came as a product of
that is true.
Wink giving them the green light. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Is something I think that you got to monitor and you have to take into consideration.
I asked this morning on Twitter about, if the Giants have roughly, again, $2 million of cap room, according to the NFLPA this morning, if you were to add somebody, a dirt cheap free agent right now, who would you do, or what position would you go to? And some of the people had some thoughts on Twitter. My thought right now, how about Akello Witherspoon?
Former Niner.
Who had a really good year for the Rams this past season.
Yep.
And I know he's kind of up there in age, but I think you could probably get him at that bargain basement bin price. And he's a tall corner. He can play off coverage. That's what he does. He's not a press man corner. He's an off coverage corner. He's got experience, obviously. Had some ups and downs in his career. Did not make a ton of money last season. To me, that would be the kind of candidate that I would probably look for to add another guy to that corner spot. If I were to spend any more money.
Well, you got youth at that position. I mean, you mentioned it, Paul. Jalen Mills, who you did bring in, has experience at both. But if you want a guy that just has solely been a corner in the NFL, I would agree with you. I mean, I think there's room for somebody like that. But, once again, I could also see the Giants, and we've seen this in previous year, be of the philosophy, let's see what these guys could do in the spring. Let's give them as many reps as possible. Remember, you have a new defensive staff, Paul. They weren't around last year.
I know.
They're going to have a different evaluation process than Wink and his staff. I know Jerome Henderson is still here, and he can give them a lot of feedback, but Shane Bowen needs to see with his own eyes.
He does.
What he thinks of these corners.
I mentioned to John the other day, you were not here last week on the program that I said this, but I really want to see Darian Beavers again. Remember, he got hurt 2 years ago.
Yeah.
After a great training camp. Last year was slow coming back off the injury. They put him on the injured list, and we never really got to see him because McFadden played well.
Yep.
And he fit what Wink Martindale wanted, and he was a healthy player, and he got better as the season went on. We never got to see Darian Beavers. I don't want to just discard him. I hope that Bowen gets a really good look at Darian Beavers now that he's a full year plus removed from his knee surgery. And I hope that Darian Beavers gets a legitimate chance to try to make this team, because I know when I saw him on the field 2 summers ago, he looked like a real player, and I loved him coming out of Cincinnati.
Well, what helps Beavers' cause is he was part of the 2022 draft class. So Shane and Dable were already here.
Yes.
When he was drafted. Meaning, if it was a different GM and a different coach, I could see, is anyone really campaigning for him in-house? Well, the fact that the staff that drafted him is still here maybe bodes well for Bowen to receive, once again, more background info and let him evaluate him throughout the course of the offseason. Once again, I mean, Beavers, though, is a different position, in fairness, from what we were talking about.
I mentioned Beavers because, he, to me, is one of those question marks. He's over a year removed from his injury now, so they always say, over a year from the ACL is when you really get your stuff back.
Sure.
Well, if we want to talk about enhancing the rush defense, Darian Beavers can be that guy. I don't think they're going to draft a linebacker in April, quite frankly. I just don't. But Darian Beavers, you know what? I don't care if he's just an early down sub-package guy. Well, if you're early downs, that's technically your standard package, and the sub-package is your later downs. But I don't care. If he's just a first, second down, and short yardage interior linebacker, from what I saw of him at Cincinnati and in his rookie training camp, Darian Beavers can absolutely enhance your effectiveness against the run. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. I'd love to know what Shane Bowen has to say about him.
Well, Beavers, think about it. Throughout his college career, he played on the line and he played off the ball.
He was all over the place.
Correct, because he moved from system to system. So I'm sure Bowen is well aware of that. But just to go back to your point, something tells me, given the fact that Beavers didn't put a lot on film last season, I don't think the Giants are in a position where they're overwhelmingly concerned if he didn't make the 53, Paul, but you wanted to bring him back as still a potential player. Something tells me they could probably put him on the practice squad. Unless something happens this offseason where teams become enamored with him. You really think that's going to happen?
I'm saying I would not discount him from making the 53.
Well, that could very well happen.
Because last year, he was slow coming off the injury, and that's why they were able to stash him. He was slow. He wasn't he did not look like the same player. He didn't have the quickness, the explosiveness. You could see he wasn't quite there. He wasn't himself. And I think everybody else who knew anything about what Beavers was going through was like, yeah, you know what? This is like a redshirt year for him. An injury redshirt in college. You get those all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I think this front office stashed him for a year on the practice squad while he got healthy with the anticipation that maybe he could be a factor in 2024. I think that's what happened. I don't know that, but I think so. And I'm hoping that Bowen sees it the same way because I think he can help this team.
Let's head back to the phone lines. We got Jerome in Charlotte on the line. What's happening, Jerome? What do you got for us?
Hey, guys, I love the show, and I love what they've been doing with the free agency. But I was wondering, did he have to get $150 million? I mean, we couldn't, work out a lower price with Burns. And also, was they even considered? I saw the trade Bears did with
Justin Fields.
Yeah, Fields.
Yeah, to Pittsburgh.
And I was wondering. I was like, wow, that was a 3 years experience for the pick they gave up.
Conditional sixth. Yeah.
Right, but that's next year. Was that under consideration with them, and how y'all feel about was he worth, the Giants looking at with that, something late next year? And I'll take that off the air.
Okay. Appreciate the phone call, Jerome. He's referring to, just so that everybody's clear, the Steelers and the Bears made a trade a few days ago. Justin Fields shipped to Pittsburgh, and it's a conditional sixth that becomes a fourth depending on whether or not he plays 50% of the snaps. I thought the deal was a huge win for Pittsburgh from a value standpoint. To get a guy that was a 2021 first rounder that still certainly has potential and upside, is on a rookie contract, and all you're giving up is a conditional sixth, and you moved on from all three of your quarterbacks from last season. Huge win. Just from a value standpoint, whatever happens with Fields is irrelevant. What you gave up for that potential, I love the move for Pittsburgh.
I would have no argument with that. I was just counting up, to me, more interesting about his comment was the question about Burns, more so than about Fields, because I agree with you. I don't think there's any debate. Pittsburgh did well on this deal. We know the Bears were shopping Fields for a long time, and if that's the best that they could get, then obviously that's the best that they can get. And the people around the league were not interested in paying any more for him. And so Pittsburgh lands a steal. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean, just...
And by the way, it fits their equation, too, because Russell Wilson's on the back end.
Oh, they need insurance. Then.
So it's beautiful. Yeah. He becomes a young, experienced insurance policy. That fits them very well. That's what the Jets were hoping to do, and they wound up taking Tyrod Taylor, who's an old, experienced insurance policy, who also gets hurt a lot. And the Giants, of course, were looking for a young, experienced insurance policy. I mean, that was the peg that fit into the right hole for Pittsburgh and for some other teams too, but apparently nobody else wanted to offer them any more.
Well, that's why I'm surprised that the Bears didn't just say, let's hold on to him. Let's see if by the trade deadline, quarterback gets hurt and maybe Fields' value goes up. Like, remember when Joshua Dobbs was on the roster, Kyler Murray came back?
Right.
They shipped him to Minnesota. Kirk Cousins got hurt.
Right.
If all you're going to get is a conditional sixth, I would say, Paul, he holds more value remaining on the roster as an insurance policy for whoever you draft number
After
one.
they publicly admitted the situation with him, they could not go backwards. At that, the dynamic is just not good for the locker room. You can't do it.
Well, I mean, Jimmy G came back to the Niners after Trey Lance was named the starter, and that proved to be beneficial.
Well,
because Trey got hurt and they needed Jimmy.
Yes, that's true.
So I think that's a nice talking point, personally.
More often than not, you can't do it. More often than not, that's going to cause a locker room division. It's just not a good policy to have. Once you go down that road with a player and then you go publicly, for the most part, you've got to follow through.
I mean, the Bears have never come out and said we're absolutely moving on.
They came out and said we want to do what's fair to Fields. They basically telegraphed it with a flying sign from the top of the Chicago Tower. Used to be known as the Sears Tower, I know, but Sears is not a sponsor and they're not really in business anymore. So I think I can say the Sears Tower. That was the name of the building. They pretty much put a flag up on top of the Sears Tower and said that Fields, we're going to move on from him. That's what they did.
No, Poles was asked the question about if you come to grips with the fact that you're going to take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, does it make sense to then do right for the player? And he did insinuate that. I get it. But GMs change their minds too, Paul. It happens,
they do.
Right?
They do.
I mean, all because you say something one week doesn't mean you got to go in that direction.
I agree. Yeah. Everything is possible, but
fluid.
Once you go there, it's harder to pull that back. In reference to your Burns point, I was just counting up in terms of average annual salary for the edge rushers in this league. And Burns is by far, at 26 years old, the youngest of, let's see, he's 26. Bryce Huff, who now signed with Philadelphia off of the Jets, is also 26. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16, 17. The 17 highest paid average salaried pass rushers in this league, only 2 of them are under 27. Burns and Huff are both 26. Okay? So part of what the Giants are paying Burns is because they think he's got much more upside. They're not paying him for production. He's only had 1 double-digit sack season in 4 NFL years. He has been to the Pro Bowl twice. He does play the run better than some edge rushers who exclusively want to go after the quarterback. He also played on a team that was behind a lot, which obviously impacts your pressure numbers. He also had an injured elbow last year. For 6 straight games, they were unable to flip and flop him, and he had to play exclusively on the left side of the defense, which allowed teams to scheme and game plan against him. He only had 2 sacks during those 6 games. That was also a factor. The Giants believe he could truly be elite. They think there is much more upside and a higher ceiling than the actual production that he showed with Carolina, for all of the reasons I just mentioned. That is why the number they gave him makes him the second highest paid average salaried pass rusher in the NFL to Nick Bosa. That's why they did that. They believe that there is much ups to Brian Burns, and as the Batman and Robin combination of Thibodeau and Burns hit the field this year, they're looking for tremendous impact. He's 26, he's healthy, okay, and they believe he's got tremendous ups. And when you consider that your top-level pass rushers usually get in this ballpark of money anyway, well, you say this all the time, Lance. It's about timing, and it's about the salary cap, which keeps going up, which means if you had to wait another year to try to buy this guy in free agency, if you could have, chances are the price would have been even higher going into next year than for what you just negotiated with him now.
Well, he and his agent, they're not naive. They're going to look at what's out there on the market. The other thing that I would add to what you said is keep in mind, this was a trade situation. This was an outright free agency, too.
Correct.
So that was contingent upon both parties getting a new deal done. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, why is that important, Paul? Well, Carolina goes to Brian Burns. Giants and I have worked out a deal. The executive tells Brian Burns that. Brian says, okay, but now I want a new contract because I want security. Mm-hmm. So at least the way that I look at it is players got a little bit of leverage, Paul, in that situation, because the player could turn around and say, we don't work out a deal, I'm nixing the trade. And then Carolina has to go elsewhere. So,
well, remember this. He was on a tag this year.
Yeah.
Right? So we always tell you about tags. Agents, when they want their new deal, they'll always look at what that tag number is this year and what the potential tag number is going to be next year, and that's where they're going to start.
Well, because they figure if you acquire him and you don't get a new deal done, worst case scenario, you tag him again.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we want to know what that number is because we want that to be factored in. So that influenced, I'm sure,
no question,
the negotiations as well.
So in any event, that's your answer about Burns. He's being paid more for what they believe is much higher upside and these other economic factors that are part of the equation, not necessarily for a guy who's had less than double-digit sacks 3 times in 4 years. That's not what they're paying for. They believe there's a lot more to come.
It's very similar, Paul, and you were here, I believe, for this show when we were talking about McKinney. Okay? We were on when there were a lot of safeties hitting the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teams were letting go of guys, and I said, don't put McKinney in with Jordan Poyer and some of these other veteran safeties because McKinney is coming off a rookie deal. So the Packers, who ultimately signed him, like you said, the Giants are evaluating Burns. They're saying what McKinney's going to give us because he's entering the prime of his career, not what Poyer may give us for a year, given the fact that he's at the end of his career. Very similar to Burns. And that's why you can't group everybody in one position together, at least from that standpoint.
The beauty of Burns is that he, to this point, has been extremely durable.
Yep. He's played at least 15 games in every season.
You know, that's a very, again, we go back to the comment at the beginning of the show. What's one of the characteristics you see about this Giants free agent class? These guys have been able to play.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to have.
I know the Meadowlands injury bug is always flying around.
It's not the Meadowlands injury bug. The best example I give you, and I still wouldn't label him as injury prone, but Olivier Vernon was the poster child of health. Was he not?
He was.
Okay?
He
and
was.
The Giants invested a lot of money in him. And then what happened? He came here, he missed games. So you want to make...
Took a couple of years, but yes.
No, but here's the thing. You're making an investment in a player. You take all the intel into consideration. It's a smart decision to invest in a player that has a track record of staying on the field. All I'm saying is when it comes to this sport, you could be durable. You could be as close to a guarantee as possible. You just never know.
That's true.
That's the unfortunate part of the NFL. All right, let's head back to the lines. Wilson's in Roxbury here on BBKL. What's happening, Wilson? What do you got for us?
Hey, Paulie, hey, Lance. How you guys doing?
Doing all right. So what conspiracy theory do we need to address today?
Oh, come on. Don't start off with a bad...
Well, you know it's going to go there anyway.
No,
so.
Wilson's going to be good today.
Oh, sure.
Yes, he is. Go ahead.
I think I'm gonna be good, Paulie, because the other day, man, I was listening. Charlie got you upset, man. I think I don't like to talk about other callers, but I think he really crossed the line and stepped over the line. One thing is to have...
Don't worry about it. It's fine. Go ahead.
I know. I just don't. I didn't like that. I didn't like that because I play around. We play around, but everything is fun, and there's like a line you don't cross. I think he crossed it, but that's not my call. That's you guys' call. But anyway, forget about that. Listen, real quick. On free agency, on Saquon, it was time. It was time. Thank you. I'm not going to wish him luck. He plays for the Eagles, but thank you. We can finish last with you. We can finish last without you. It was time.
Okay.
And from last Monday to this Monday, on paper at least, we are a much better team. To me, on paper, since last Monday when free agency started till this Monday, we are a much better team.
Okay.
Whether that comes to fruition or not, that's up to debate.
No, I don't. We were a better team on paper last August than we were prior to.
Yeah, I mean, if you only
just
won
never
football
know.
games on paper, though.
You know, it just doesn't work out that way. You got to win it on the field.
Listen, Lance, I can't see the players play. All I can go by is by the...
No, I get it, but once again, the caveat of on paper or that premise, is nice to say in passing, but it doesn't hold much weight.
So Wilson has one of two things to say now. Either he's going to say what else we need, or he's going to say on paper isn't any good. One of those two things, Wilson. Where are you going?
It's March 18th. What else are we going to talk about? But anyway, so on Joe Shane, I was worried. I was worried that this year was going to be like another reset and another dumpster fire. But the moves that he made, you don't make moves like that if you're trying to rebuild again. You don't make moves like that. So I think, thank God, it looks like we actually trying to win. No more rebuilding because I was sick and tired of rebuilding. So you don't make moves. Paulie, what I'm saying to you guys, Paul and Lance, is you don't make moves like that if you're going to draft a quarterback with the 6th overall pick. I don't think there's no way in hell he can draft a quarterback now after all the moves that he made. It's impossible.
Well, I just don't understand why you would say that, though. I'm a little confused.
Well, Len, you're not going to pay a defensive lineman $80 million if you're rebuilding.
Well, but going back to Paul's point, Brian Burns is going to be 26 in April. So, see, I don't like the term rebuilding. That's just my personal. I think everyone adjusts their roster every offseason. You never bring back 53 guys. It always changes. It always evolves. So I guess I don't understand where you're coming from that standpoint.
Well, I'm saying all these offensive linemen, all the Brian Burns, and I'm just saying like Carolina is rebuilding. They traded away their best defensive player.
Well, but Burns Burns was set to be a free agent though, so they had to make a decision with Burns.
Well, Lance. I mean, they could have paid him. He could have played on their.
They certainly could have paid him. But I also think the Panthers, they have a new coaching staff. Okay, they have a new general manager. Keep that in mind. When you bring in everyone new, the thought process is different. None of those guys drafted Brian Burns.
Wilson, I'm going to help. Wilson, I'm going to take your side here for a minute, and we'll beat up on Lance because here's what happened. Here's what happened.
Okay.
They did sign 2 young, experienced veteran offensive linemen who should be theoretically in their primes. That tells you they want to play for now. They signed Singletary to be the lead running back by committee guy who has already got 5 years in the league, which means they're playing for now.
Well,
I understand that. No, I don't get that. But the type of guys, the age factor, the experience factor, they're more playing for now than they are 3-4 years away.
Right.
Wilson, I agree with you totally. And quite frankly, also the signing of Drew Lock, a young, experienced veteran who can be an insurance policy for your quarterback. All of this stuff smells like they're playing for now. And they're also not looking to draft a quarterback at 6. That's the way it all smells. I agree with you. Right. You don't have to sell me. I'm on your same page.
Right. I want to tell Lance something. Lance, there's a difference between you always got to retweak your roster. I mean, 30% of the roster is new every year. You retweak it, but there's one thing retweaking. There's one thing like tearing it down and then build it back up. That's what I'm saying. That I thought.
Give me an example of a team that tore down a roster. I'm curious where they got rid of all 53 guys and completely went in a different direction.
This is pointless. You're not going to get anywhere with him. It's all right.
We're having a conversation. I want to understand.
Here's what he's saying.
Example of a team that literally tore everything down.
Here's what he's saying. By the additions the Giants made, they added guys who are in the middle of their careers as opposed to trading off guys. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, but who
and getting draft picks from the future?
For example, Washington traded off guys.
Yeah, that was last year.
They traded off guys because they're in a rebuild.
Right.
No, but they also
Washington's in a rebuild. The Giants are not.
Washington also had to decide.
That's okay.
Paul, you're dismissing. No, hold on. Washington had to decide who they could re-sign. You guys are dismissing that. They couldn't pay all 4 defensive linemen.
But that's what
most teams have to determine that.
But that's what you do when you're in a rebuild.
No, you don't. You have to sacrifice guys. Just like, wait a minute. You're going to tell me other teams that were in a winning situation didn't have to sacrifice talent? Everyone has to sacrifice talent.
You get, but you don't.
All right. Wilson, it's okay. Wilson,
it just doesn't
it's okay. Let it go. It's okay.
Wait, you guys, no one wants to ever have a conversation on this show. I'm having a conversation because I disagree with the philosophy. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I disagree with the philosophy. You guys get worked up because I have to go. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you say. 100%.
You're allowed to.
You're right. I'm wrong. I mean, it's ridiculous. Nobody can have a conversation on
the point is, this is one of those things where you can agree to disagree.
Yes, I'm trying to
we're not saying
my perspective,
and you're okay with that.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I don't understand.
I happen to. Never mind.
It's just
Wilson. Go. It's okay.
No,
go have a pizza. We'll talk another time.
I have no problem with what Wilson is saying. I have no issue. I have no issue with what Wilson is saying. I have no problem.
So well, anyway, today Paul agrees with me and you disagree. Okay, what I'm saying is, all I'm saying that today I'm happy that it looks like we're not just, it's a complete rebuild. So that's my opinion, Lance. Obviously you think differently, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
And then Daniel Jones, right? I think the easiest thing to say, because everybody says it, is that Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. Well, he said, I'm going to say too. What do they expect from Daniel Jones? Look, when Daniel Jones, right, I think Daniel Jones, I told you this before, has a top 10 arm, and he's a top 5 running quarterback in the league. This guy is 6'3", 6'4", 235. I mean, and he's got one of the best arms in the NFL. When Daniel Jones, I know he got hurt, but listen, when Daniel Jones, right, had a competent, not a good, but a competent offensive-minded coach, and Pat Shermer, he threw 24 touchdown passes as a rookie. You don't do that if you're a bum. You don't do that if you don't know if you don't have any talent. Then after that, Pat Shermer, unfortunately, Mike Francesa killed him, and New York engulfed him, and he left. Then he inherited Joe Judge, and upset.
Wilson, without going over his whole career again, here's the point. When you look at a quarterback or any player, the first thing that you want to decide is, what does his toolbox show you? Does he have the necessary skills to succeed at a certain level in this league? That's the first thing you do, right? He unquestionably has the skills to be a winning quarterback in this league. Now, beyond that, and we talk about this all the time, there's the personnel file, the intangibles, the injury factor, the coachability, the smarts, the instincts. There's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it. But in terms of the raw tools, Daniel Jones has one of the better toolboxes of quarterbacks in this league. That is indisputable. No matter how many people want to hate on this guy, they are ignoring the facts. He has the tools to be a winner in this league. That's a fact.
Paul, listen. And I know you guys like Brian Dable. I personally don't like him. So I don't think he doesn't make. I don't know. I just don't like him. And one thing real quick.
Wilson, we're over time. We'll talk to you soon. Be good.
We'll let you go on that note. Listen, also, it's hard to evaluate a quarterback when there's so much change around the quarterback, and there's a lot of different play callers too.
That impacts more of the other stuff than it does the toolbox. The toolbox you could see and identify. Sure. It's the other stuff that gets really impacted by what's around him.
Well, but also I think the injuries take a toll on a player too.
It does.
And you wonder, how much that has impacted him during the course of his career and how much that's going to impact him, of course, entering this upcoming season. All right, that is going to wrap up latest edition of BBKL. It is part of the Giants platforms everywhere and Giants.com/podcast. We'll be up and running again on Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. We'll speak to you tomorrow right here on BBKL. Have a good one.
Introducing the Lisa Chill Collection, your answer to hot nights. These mattresses beat the heat with ultra-cool covers, whisking away heat for the perfect sleep temperature. Save up to $460 on Chill mattresses and get 2 free pillows when you shop now. iHeart listeners can save an extra $50 off by visiting lisa.com/iHeart. That's LEESA.com/iHeart. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
This is where projects come to life. Our showrooms are designed to inspire with the latest products from top brands, curated in an inviting, hands-on environment, and a team of industry experts to support your project. We'll be there to make sure everything goes as planned, from product selection to delivery coordination. At Ferguson Bath, Kitchen, and Lighting Gallery, your project is our priority.
Find great brands like Bosch at your local showroom or visit us online at ferguson.com/build.